Good morning. I am Lynne King-Smith. I'm CEO here at TicketForce, and today I am hosting a webinar. It's a live chat question and answer format with an opportunity for you to ask questions throughout the presentation of the marketing and PR experts that I have here with me today. The webinar is called the Event Marketing Life Cycle. So we're going to talk about event marketing and PR before your event, during your event, and after your event. And you have an hour here where you can ask your questions of these professionals, and I think you're going to have a really great time today getting those questions answered. We are recording today's broadcast, so you will be receiving a link to it shortly following so that you can share this with other people in your organization and go back and review it later if you'd like to. So to ask a question, I have some prepared questions as well. But to ask a question of either Melissa or James, just feel free to type it in the question box, and I'll monitor those and get to them as much as we can throughout the presentation. If we have to pick some up at the end, then we certainly will. So I want to go ahead and just introduce Melissa. I still can't pronounce your last name, and you've been married for oodles of years. Did I get it close? DiGianfilippo?
It's DiGianfilippo. Close.
That's so much easier. Dijon like the mustard, right? Yeah, DiGianfilippo and James Grant, who has a two-syllable name, first and last, making that really easy. Melissa is president and co-owner of Serendipit Consulting. She is a PR genius and has helped me and TicketForce many times over, and we love her work. So welcome, Melissa. And James Grant is the audience engagement manager at StringCan Interactive, and we've worked with James and the professionals at StringCan for several years as well. James was a presenter last year at our TicketForce client conference, and everybody gave him rave reviews. So welcome, James. Go ahead, Melissa, just give a brief introduction to the group here before we get started with the Q&A.
Sure. So I handle PR for Serendipit. We're a full-service marketing and PR agency based out of Phoenix, but we service clients all over the nation and now internationally. And I am truly obsessed with the art of media relations and just public relations in general. So that means getting my clients, press coverage, whether their goals are local, national, or regional, whatever that may be. And I'm excited to share with you today some of those tips.
Thank you. And James, welcome, and give a brief intro yourself. And I'd love it, James, if you talk a little bit about your love of live events.
No problem. Yeah, so my name is James Grant. I'm the audience engagement manager here at StringCan Interactive. We're a strategic marketing agency. We have an office here in Scottsdale, Arizona, and then we also have one in Paris, France, serving clients both here nationally as well as international. And I spend the majority of my time working with content and social media strategy for our clients and helping them really create an engaging community where they can find their online audience, they can connect with them, and then really start building symbiotic relationships of value. So I really work with all of our clients to create that engaged community. I actually am a live event, well, I'm a big theater and music person, so I spend a lot of my time going to events, participating in events, planning events, and participating. So it's one of my particular personal passions.
It is indeed, and I can attest to that. So I know that James makes is it an annual trek that you make to New York City to hit?
Yeah, I call Broadway it my pilgrimage.
Yes. So
every year.
Yeah, it's fabulous. So we all have our love, and all of us here, and welcome to all the attendees who also have, everybody is touching live events in one way or another, either as venue managers or marketing professionals in those venues. So we're going to keep, obviously everything is focused on how do you market an event, what's the life cycle to marketing an event, and we've really seen a shift there where it's not just prior to the event or the push to get the initial on sales there, but there's actually a marketing cycle that runs through the event and then an approach to do things after the event is over. So there's an entire cycle that we can take advantage of that have to do with bringing back repeat business and getting people really engaged with your venue and your event. So I'm going to start with you, James. Just what should we do online before the event even happens? And this is a really broad question, so you may come back to this, to help get butts in seats at the very, very beginning.
You know, that's a great question, Lynn. It's kind of overarching and a little bit scary, but I think the first thing I tell people is when you know you have an event coming up and you've decided to put it on at your venue or your location, I think the most important thing to do is to first simplify and focus. Decide where you want to be focusing your online efforts and where your audience lives. I think for any online effort, you need to have your foundation be focused around your website. That being said, you need to create at least some content to publish on there surrounding your event. Maybe it's a simple announcement of what it is, of what it might include, of when it is, but that needs to be hosted on your site, not only to help you reach organically the people you might want, but also so that it's hosted correctly in your own domain. Beyond your website, there's a lot of different avenues you can kind of travel down and different tools you can use. A lot of that can get really overwhelming and scary for people, but my recommendation is to simplify and focus. It's way better to just choose 1, 2, or maybe 3 things or tactics that you think you might be able to effectively pull off for an event, rather than trying to stick your finger in every single pie and try to do 15 or 20 different things. What I'd recommend, that we recommend our clients to do, is to do a little bit of preliminary research. Have you done this event before? Have you, do you know the type of audience that you're specifically looking for this type of event? And then if there's an ability to then survey that audience or to interview members of that audience, and ask them some really smart questions. We do this by building personas, by figuring out, okay, if we have this event X, what are the most likely personas that are going to want to purchase tickets to this event, and then hopefully find some influencers who will then not only purchase themselves, but influence other people to purchase as well. And we want to look at where they live and interact online. So let's say if you have an event that skews a little bit older, maybe they do participate in Facebook and they have a profile, and maybe social ads might be a really smart way to go. If you have a more millennial trending event that you're looking for a much younger audience, that might not be the social media platform of choice. Yep. But doing a little bit of preliminary research will help, and then choosing 1 or 2 tools to really drive home, I think, is the biggest takeaway.
Thank you. That's a great start to really be focused, because sometimes we do try to do too much. And for the audience, feel free anytime something pops into your mind, a question, while James or Melissa are talking, just go ahead and put that in the question box, and I'll feed those to them at the relevant time, so that we can have as much of a conversation as you would like to have today. And we'll come back to that, James, but I think, Melissa, we'll pop over to you on the PR side ahead of time. And unless you're in a fairly large organization, I think sometimes PR is the forgotten tool with event marketing. So how would I know if I'm bringing an event in, what kind of thing is going to make that newsworthy to my local or even broader news media?
Sure. So there are a number of things that media care about. First, just to kind of go back to what James was saying, the minute you have all the information about the event, I would start sharing that with media, even the basics, to get it on calendars. So putting together like a basic media alert. Once you have that information, you'll be able to understand, okay, is it a hyper-local event that really only like my immediate, community is going to want to attend or care about? Or is it an event that could potentially draw regional or national attention? So that will help you understand maybe who's going to care about the event. And then the newsworthy elements, depending on if it's local or national, would be, is there a celebrity angle? How timely is it? So is it happening in the next quarter? Obviously it's not newsworthy until you're maybe a little bit closer to some of the media. Human interest angle, those are the things that the media is really gonna care about and want to talk about. A charity angle is also great if your event has a piece there. And I think I can go into I think the tools that you need to promote the event pre-event, if you want me to, Lynne.
Sure. And what is a good time frame generally? If we book an event that is 8 months out because it's a national tour versus we pick up a date last minute and we've only got, 6 weeks. What's an ideal time frame or how many media hits would you do in that case?
Yeah, so great example. I think the ideal time frame for any event is a minimum of 3 months. Of course, I know you're going to have those events that are like a week, you have really short notice maybe for some reason, but let's talk about the ideal time frame first. So 3 months before, I would create a calendar advisory and get it out to all your local glossy print publications. They always also have online calendars now as well.
Mm-hmm.
They can actually pre-plan that content and publish it in your local lifestyle magazine, whatever outlet's relevant. And then you'd also add those that listing to the online sites so that it's on all of those calendars. And then when you get closer to the event, so really a month to 2 weeks out, is when you can start really proactively hitting your local media with ideas or angles that would be relevant for them to come and do a bigger story about you more than just a calendar listing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure that building those relationships, I think sometimes it's kind of off-putting. We can do social media because we're not having to, we can push that out without having to ask anybody if they find our event interesting. I think there's sometimes something that holds us back with feeling like the news is going to care about what we're doing. How do you build, as a venue or a promoter, how would you recommend they build those relationships? Or do you just, if I don't have any, do I just start sending it to my print media, my news channels? How do you get started in that?
Yeah, so it is a little bit about relationships, but honestly, it's mostly about telling a dang good story. So you can start, it's going to take some preliminary research, pulling up who's the editor, who's the events editor, who's the reporters at your daily papers, your print publications, and then of course TV. I think broadcast is huge today because we're just a really visual, we're visual people.
Mm-hmm,
so I think you want to find the right morning producers, event producers at your local TV stations. And then just remember, they don't care if you send one sentence to them or just a basic press release about the event, they're not going to pick it up. They're not going to care. But if you give them a compelling paragraph that's not salesy, that's really what's the meat and potatoes of this event? Why is it cool? What's the angle? How visual is it? Can they come and get advanced, an advanced interview, or can they come to your venue and check it out while they're talking about the event that's coming up that night? Right. That's what they want.
Yeah. Okay, that's very helpful. And James, too, over on your side of you talked about personas, and obviously that plays into what publications you would be formulating. But if you've got a venue that hasn't done that work of really knowing what their personas are, how can they best determine or get into their data to find out who they're really targeting on an event so they can target their marketing for those particular events?
That's a great question. I think the biggest thing is to work with the data you have. And look and see which platforms and avenues have worked well for you in the past and start tracking some of that ROI. I especially think in a digital world, we really want to look at what not only is the media cost or the hard cost for each of these networks if you choose to use Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, but also looking at what the time it takes. If you have someone on your team that understands well a platform or is familiar with a platform, that's already going to provide you an even better ROI. So you want to meet somewhere between what your personas and your audience is interested in, as well as what you can effectively execute.
Yeah.
So I think it's a fine balance between the two.
Yep. And is there a way to segment that data so that I've got, maybe based on what I bring in, I've got 2 or 3 or 4 different audiences? How would they go about doing that?
Yeah, so what you want to do is collect as much information as you can from those who do purchase tickets, and then start looking at some of the demographic and hopefully a little bit of the psychographic data, realizing, okay, what's the median age of my ticket buyer? How soon and how quickly do they actually buy tickets? What are their ticket buying tendencies? Do they buy 1 or 2 tickets, or are they buying in groups? And then I would start dividing, especially ticket purchase number would be a great way to start.
Right.
And then start looking at these mostly women or men. Some of those demographics can really help you tailor your ads and tailor your strategy to a little bit more broad base, but it's much more strategic than just shooting blind.
Yep, absolutely. Is any questions that the audience has on that beginning, creating that buzz at the start of your event? Go ahead and type them in now if you do. And James, I want to ask you if at some point in the presentation, I'm remembering from when you talked to us, we were talking about what is that point where somebody decides to buy a ticket, and what's that life cycle for that person to get themselves to an event, and how many touch points there might be along the way. And you gave us that very, I wish we had the graphic. Yeah, we should have planned to put that up. That your own story that you actually had where I don't even remember how many touch points there were in that you had from the time you heard about the event and why you did to actually getting the ticket and getting into the event. And I think you even were able to meet the artist because it was a small club venue. Are you remembering that story? And is there any way you could summarize that for us? At some point
totally.
Today, I think it'd be excellent. If you can just shoot from the hip and do it, I think that'd be great because it talks about, you know, there's not just one way to get to a person and get them to that buying experience.
Yeah, let me kind of give you the Reader Digest version of it.
Yeah.
The story is I grew up listening to Kelly Clarkson, and so I followed one of her playlists on Spotify. And as an avid music fan, I used a tool called Swarm FM, and so this showed me, okay, these artists are going to be local, or going to be coming to concerts around your area soon that you follow on Spotify. It told me Kelly Clarkson was coming to a concert. I Googled her tickets. I found a Groupon for like 20 bucks, told my friends, took a group of about 8. While I was there, they're handing out flyers at the venue.
Okay.
And it wasn't a venue flyer. It was a ticket selling flyer for a different artist. And then I thought, oh, there's Artist ZZ Top's coming. I then logged in on my app called Bands in Town, and I said, hey, I want to remember she's coming. Got tickets, went to the theater, tweeted out that she sang the encore 5 feet from my face, and then she favorited my tweet. And so in a matter of probably 3 or 4 weeks, I used 8 or 9 different tools that then connected me, and all of a sudden now that place and that event and that venue means so much more to me because of that interaction. And so knowing those touch points and those tools that your personas might use can really benefit you in understanding that journey.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I love that story because it does, you know, we can't just depend on one channel for sure. And even in that story, it had something as old school as a flyer, right? I mean, there was that piece of the puzzle that was there. So I think sometimes just knowing what's going to work, and that worked in that venue, in that setting. And we're seeing that. We're seeing street teams again go out in certain markets, and that's part of knowing your market and doing the handout, all the way from that to something very sophisticated where, you know, the music listening platform you were using was letting you know when something was going to be in town as well. So it runs the gamut for sure.
Totally. And I think there is a key point you brought up, Lynn, that you can use traditional tactics to help drive people online and to purchase that ticket. It still is effective.
Yeah, fabulous. I love that. That's tweetable. So, hey, if you're not already, join us. The conversation is being live tweeted, and just follow us at TicketForce, and you'll be able to see, and go ahead. If you're able to tweet and listen at the same time, we invite you to join the conversation and tweet the things out that are working for you, or questions as well. So thank you. That's really the beginning, and that's where we used to stop in marketing with live events, is once the event day came, the marketers were like, we're done. We got the people, we got the butts in the seats. And we've been talking a lot in the last number of years about engagement at the event. And so, you know, Melissa, I didn't ask you specifically, but how would you get some sort of, how would you be able to use PR on the day of the event to really continue to create buzz, and what types of media would you use specifically in the PR world for the day of?
Yeah, so I want to go back because this is kind of before, but it is effective for the day of.
Yes.
Just to make sure if it's an event that you're comfortable inviting media to attend, you want them there the day of, because even though you've sold all your tickets or the event's going to be passed, they're going to cover the event. And if you're doing the event recurring, or you just want to show off your venue because you're a great place to have events, you want those media there. So consider influencers like killer bloggers, traditional media like TV, producers and reporters and anchors, and then, your key print media. You want to make sure you're inviting them by giving them a free ticket, as much as, I know we don't like to do a ton of giveaways. I think that's really important. And then the day of the event, make sure that you're meeting the media when they attend. See if they want to chat with anyone from your venue, from your company, from your organization, with the talent, whatever that looks like. Give them the resources they need, and then you're going to get some amazing post-event coverage, which I know we're going to talk about later.
Yeah.
The other thing is PR is kind of moving into not just traditional, like old school media, but creating your own media, being your own media source. So at the event, I would set up some kind of Facebook Live where, you see all these award shows, people walking the red carpet before an event happens.
Right.
Why can't you replicate that and do something similar, obviously a different scale, for your event, where you actually are live, or someone from your organization is on Facebook Live, interviewing people who are coming by, talking about the event, what to expect, your whole follower base on Instagram, Facebook, wherever you're broadcasting, you'll have it on Facebook, but then you can reshare other places. They're going to see and engage with you on this, and if they didn't come to this event, they're probably going to come to your next one.
That's a fabulous idea, and we've seen that happen as well with Periscope. Just real briefly, do you feel like Facebook Live is just kind of taken over Periscope, so we don't have to have this other thing because we're all already on Facebook? Is that the channel that you would recommend?
I think so, and I think the cool thing about Facebook Live is you've already built that audience, and you can actually save that content and reuse it, which is kind of cool,
right.
I think. I don't know what you think.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And do either one of you have any recommendations for if I want to start doing these live feeds that are they're not professional, which is great because that's a huge trend. Who's the right person on my staff? Who's somebody that maybe isn't actively doing this? If I'm the manager, I certainly can't walk around and be interviewing people and be worried about filming. What's the type of personality that I should look for? And either one of you, both of you can answer this when I'm going to tap somebody to say, hey, I want to start doing some Facebook Live from our events. Who do I get to do that?
I would look at the demographic of your event attendees.
Okay.
So you may have 2 or 3 people on your staff that you can tap into, a millennial, whoever your demographic is.
Okay.
It needs to be someone who's super comfortable on the spot, not scripted necessarily. So I would, if you need to start with one person, but then ideally you really have a person who fits in and is relatable to your demographic who's attending those events.
Yeah. Any comment on that, James?
Tim, I agree. I think that a little bit will go a long way, and I really like the recommendation moving from Periscope to the Facebook Live for the pure ability that content will then be cataloged and saved, and that's something that you can use in upcoming events, especially if you have a recurring event, whether it's multiple days within a week or month, or if it's a yearly annual event. I think that's a really great way to categorize and catalog the content you have.
Yep, absolutely. We did a groundbreaking event for our new office space earlier this year, and the town where I live actually came out, and they did it with Periscope, but they did just some real quick live snippets, and then they took that and converted it and went back to their offices and created like this whole little montage of the day, which I thought was fabulous as well. So that's a way. I loved it because they were creating a buzz during the event, and they were, that was really instant media. But then they were able to use that content later by kind of putting it together in a more formal way. So I think that would work as well in that live event. It's kind of like making your own, Snapchat my story type of thing is what they did. It was really effective. So. Let's go to the day of now. So we can either get media there and bring them in to do any broadcast we can get them to do stories, get them backstage, however we can do that. so they can be putting stuff out, and then also live video that you do via Facebook Live. James, on social media and online, what can we be doing that day of the event to really create buzz and excitement?
Great question. No, I think this is where it's worth the time and the resources to dedicate at least one person to watch those social networks. I think there's three main aspects that really need to be involved here as far as online and social. First, we need to monitor your event, whether that's using a specific hashtag or following a few Twitter identities, or just searching keywords, responding to when people make comments or interact or mention your event, and then learning how to involve people that are on the ground there and incorporate that conversation. I think it's worth the time and the investment to have someone, even if it's just a portion of their responsibility, to be at that event, kind of almost like a real-time reporter that's set and watching those conversations. And the more you have during the event, the more likely you're going to build really strong relationships that keep people coming back and bringing other people as well.
Nice. Great idea. And you know, I tell venues the same thing, to tap into people who can be kind of dedicated to that. And it may be somebody, that may be somebody in your marketing team, it may not be. It really depends on the size and scope of the venue and what we're talking about. So any recommendations on hashtags or any of that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think that especially given an event hashtag that's custom is going to be the best thing that you could possibly do, and displaying that as much as you can appropriately at your event would also be great, because if someone, even if they're just walking to the bathroom or if they're going to get a beverage or a food, if they see that hashtag, the next time they post or they interact online, they're going to want to remember it. It should be simple, it should be short, but it should be custom so that it's not mistaken for something else. It's a great way to aggregate everything that's happening at your event online.
Nice. Yep. Excellent. So I think those are some great, amazing tools for the day of your event. And like I said, we've got to shift from thinking that the marketing is over once the tickets are sold, and the engagement opportunity is huge there. Does anybody have any questions? Or I'm not seeing any yet, but feel free to type in there if you have any questions on that. We're being so thorough, there are no questions. All right, so last portion here is really talking about after the event, which kind of blows my mind that we think in those terms, but I know that a lot of people are realizing. James, would you touch on a little bit what should happen in the first 24 hours in social? If my event is over at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night, what should be happening in those next 24 hours?
Yeah, this is really your sweet spot. I'm glad you brought this up. There's actually quite a few things, but I just want to hit a few of those highlights. The first thing is to do is, again, to monitor, to really watch and see anyone who's mentioning some aspect, even if it's a negative aspect of your event, monitoring and then responding to every single one. Interacting with any engagement that whether they use your hashtag or they call you out specifically on the platform, that's the most important. And then not only passively doing that, but then actively seeking the engagement you want, asking for feedback, asking people if they had a good time, asking users to share the content that they took, whether it's a video or a picture. Resharing what users have already shared is also huge. I know when I go to an event and then I tweet a picture and someone retweets that, or the event retweets that, it makes me really excited.
Right, right.
It also increases the reach. And then thanking users and inviting them back to their next event, I think, is key.
Yeah. And can some of that be automated? I mean, do you feel like, you know, an auto email that goes out so that they've got it that next morning based on audience, is that an effective tool to just get either survey or response or thank you or an offer or something like that? What do you think on the email being automated, aside from what you're doing on the side of spontaneous responding on social?
Yeah, I think the email can be an awesome, awesome tool, especially for feedback when that event's fresh in their mind, because your huge brand advocates, your event advocates are going to have some thoughts, positive or negative, that they might want to share afterwards, and that first 24 hours is essential.
Great. Good to know. And you know, like again, if you are not thinking about this on a Saturday night event until everybody comes in Monday morning at 9, you've really missed that first 24 hours of
Exactly.
what did you call it? The sweet spot. Yeah.
Yep, that sweet spot. Exactly.
Yeah. Melissa, what about PR on the, you know, after an event is over? What can we do to have some coverage following up? What kind of things would the media be interested in after my event is over?
Sure. So definitely high-res images. You want to make sure you have a photographer capturing great moments from the event, and you know, as soon as possible. I would say also within 24 hours, ideally the next morning, you have those images. They don't have to be, you know, edited. They just need to be really solid high-res format. Do not send the media link, you know, attachments in an email. I would just put those images in, you know, a shared drive where you can send a public link, or and you know, Dropbox kind of thing. They won't typically open large attachments unless they've already told you that they want to accept those images. So just be cautious there if you're just kind of mass pitching. So I would send just a quick recap of the event in an email with that link so they can download images, and let them know that you'd be happy to talk to them about attendance, you know, how the event went. If you can do any post-event interviews with any of the talent, that's always great to offer as well. And then I also want to reiterate or share, I guess, for the first time, the real power of PR is not always in the moment the story runs. It's in how you use it after the fact. So you have this amazing audience built in. You want to make sure as soon as any of the stories run, whether it's pre-event, during the event, or post-event, that you reshare them to your network, whether, you know, through email, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, wherever you have the ability to reshare content. That's going to make your audience be reminded of you continuously, see that you're an expert in this, that you're great at putting on events. They're going to remember how amazing the event was. And you can always do like throwbacks like after the event. So if you had a great news story about the event, covering the event, you maybe want to do a throwback Thursday, you know, a month after the event, and bring it up. Why not remind your audience? Like,
that's a great idea. I love that. Good input. And while we're on PR, Melissa, we talked a little bit about kind of just best practices for like news releases. So you could also do a press release afterwards. But just real quick, and I know you're fabulous at it, but what are some best practices if I want to just do a full-on press release before or after my event?
Yeah, so make sure that you do your best to follow AP style format, which is Associated Press news writing. You can just Google some quick tips for that. Try to keep your press releases to one page and have them be, you know, focused on the details, not fluff. So it's great that you think your event's amazing and it's going to be really fun and it's fabulous, but just try not to use those words in your press release. And when you're sending press releases to the media, I still do not think you should send attachments. I would copy and paste the body of the press release into an email with a short intro. If it's the first time corresponding with a media person, they're not going to open your email if you send an attachment, but they will read it if it's you know, appropriate. And I would always have a really strong subject line for the email. So make it really clear, you know, Kelly Clarkson concert on Tuesday at venue.
Right. Okay.
Whatever that looks like, I would make that subject line really strong. And don't, if you are sending an attachment for a press release, just don't send it as a PDF. They do just want it as a Word document.
Oh, that's interesting. Great to know. You gave away some good free tips there, Melissa. Thank you. Some good expertise. Are there any questions on after the event, or do either of you have any more comments on post-event things we don't want to miss out on?
The one thing I was going to say is after each event, I think there's really good value in doing an event retrospective, looking at which mediums and platforms you decided to use and to go with, and which approach and strategy you used for each of them, and then to decide and kind of articulate what went well and what didn't go well so that you can optimize that for the next event you do. I think that's really essential I also believe that if you do it within about a week or so of that event, it's going to be the most influential.
Okay.
Looking back and say, okay, what did we do? What would we want to change for next year or for the next event? I think those are really impactful moments where you can start that ROI discussion.
Sounds good. That's good to do. And I think kind of common sense, but sometimes we do get in a rush and we kind of just, I always say lather, rinse, repeat. You just keep doing the same things without really thinking about it. So that's great tip. So, so kind of just to close out today, couple of just general PR and marketing questions. Melissa, you wanted to talk a little bit about, everybody keeps saying that our print media is dying, and I honestly don't do much. Now, I'm not directly advertising many events, so I know that some of our venue clients are still using some print media, and it depends on what print. But what are the hot trends that you see in PR that we need to make sure we stay on top of if indeed we're kind of losing one of our top mediums?
Yeah, I think whenever someone says to me that they think traditional media is dying, I always say, I don't think it is really. I think it's just changing. So there are still some traditional tactics that we don't want to forget about that I've already touched on. But I did kind of mention Facebook Live and creating your own news channel. That is way bigger than I think most of us thought it would be, and it's going to get even bigger.
Wow.
So making sure that you capitalize on your audience as your own news source and whatever that means for you, it's really important. It's also cool to know that a lot of the local TV stations and even print publications are now considering Facebook Live one of their channels. So you now will see a lot of producers and TV stations teasing a segment on their Facebook Live or doing an interview on Facebook Live, not always on the TV station. And I think that's a big opportunity, because if they need content for Facebook Live, because now that most of them are required to do it, why couldn't you just pitch a Facebook Live only segment? I mean, the audience that they reach on Facebook is way bigger than even who actually watches the TV station, I bet. So I think that's a big opportunity that's going to become a lot bigger in the near future. And then also just influencers. I think for a while we kind of started avoiding bloggers just because there were so many, and it was really hard to understand who was influential and who wasn't. There are so many tools now where you can see who really is an influencer, not just an everyday blogger. So I would encourage everyone to find out who their local influencers are and really get in with them. Make sure that they know about you, they attend your events, and I think that's a good opportunity.
Yeah, that's really great feedback, and we appreciate that a lot. And I think a YouTube channel as well is powerful, but I think the Facebook Live is really key right now. So
yeah, I agree.
Awesome, James. To kind of close out, what's just some good advice you have on which networks and platforms and advertising to do? Because I hear from a lot of venue promoters, you just get used to using one of them, and then there's a new one that pops up, and how do I know what's really effective? What advice do you have?
So my biggest advice would be to not necessarily invest a large amount of money in something that's new. I think especially when we're talking small to mid-sized venues or events, we want to look at something that is going to provide a good ROI. And the reality is after these newer networks launch, usually there's a curve that happens where they become a lot more cost efficient. For instance, advertising on Instagram once was only for the big, huge, deep pockets, and is now much more affordable, and it's much more of a viable platform to use. So I'd recommend sticking a little bit with the tried and true that have the larger networks, especially as you're starting out, and to avoid some of those shiny objects that may price gouge, especially because they're new.
Is that usually what they do when they come out and they start to monetize? They're really expensive, and then does it come down and get within reason then?
So it often can happen because they're trying to find where their true market value is.
Gotcha.
And they always rather start high and come low.
What is which one gives the most bang for the buck right now? Like which is the most affordable platform?
So right now as far as social networks go, Facebook's unparalleled. So you're going to have your lowest cost per click on there just because it is so broad.
Gotcha. And they're obviously assuming they have so many more users, so it's going to be pay-per-click, and that's going to work better for them. I understand, but good to know. I mean, and just real quick, I keep hearing people talking about which platforms, the next generations are using, and I saw one quote that said, and I didn't think it was believable. I'll run it by you, James. 90% of teenagers are not using Facebook. Is that true? And from what you've seen?
Yeah, we're seeing trends like that a lot, especially the generation that's now in high school and coming into college.
Yeah.
They view Facebook as a parental platform.
Right.
What they're calling it, and so you're finding accounts like Instagram and Snapchat becoming much more popular with the younger generation.
Yeah, and I know that's true. I thought 90% was a bit of a stretch, but that's a big assumption to make.
It's hard to put a number on it, but it's a solid movement for sure.
Yeah, and do you think they'll come back to it at all? I mean, my kids are millennials, and they went through this real hatred for Facebook at one point because grandma, it's like once the parents got on, it was shocking. Then once grandma got on, it was even worse. And then they kept coming back to it because they felt like if they didn't, they were missing out on some information that was out there. Do you have any speculation on whether this next group will do that same thing as they grow up? Will they be like, oh, shoot, I got to be on there?
So I think actually that probably won't happen, and it's because of what I call like the first in, first out effect, where wherever you choose to build your social network first is usually where you stay. You may hop to one or two additional networks, but if they're not engaging with Facebook by the time they get to college, then there's a low likelihood that they'll actually engage and live on that platform.
Interesting. Excellent. Anything to say in closing? I think that we've got some great feedback here and great input today from two fabulous experts, James and Melissa. And we've got on the screen for you, the larger is their Twitter handle, so they're going to put out a lot of great information there. Both really great follows. And then their email, if you'd like to contact them with a question that you think of later, feel free to do that. That's also on the screen. And we will shortly be sending you out a link to the recording so that you can share this if you found it helpful with other people in your organization. Anything else in closing, you guys?
No, I think we covered a lot of great topics. I hope it's useful to everyone, and I'm always happy to answer additional questions. So.
Thank you.
Exactly. If any questions, send them my way. Twitter or email is great.
Wonderful. You guys are fabulous. I always love talking to you. It would have been fun to do this in person, but a much better time saver to do it as we did. So I thank you so much for your expertise and your time and in sharing that with our clients and our listeners. And we look forward to doing this again sometime soon. And the webinar is concluded. Thanks very much, everybody, for attending.
Thank you.